Hello everyone, welcome to Pro Strings and this webinar or live class on position changing. My name is Henriette. I am delighted to teach you today. I'm a violin teacher in the UK and I'm the founder of Pro Strings. Today we are talking about position changing on the violin or the viola. I will give you some hints and tips about what to look out for when you change positions. And please have your instrument ready because we will be doing some exercises as well, which I hope you will be joining in with. By the end of this class, you should have a clear understanding of how to use your left elbow to make position changing more smooth and fluent. And also how to position your left thumb with your fingers held high above the strings. I will do my best to answer any questions that you may have as we go along. I will remind myself to actually read the chat box and your comments. If I miss them for some reason, please forgive me and I will try and answer them at the end. Before we get started with position changing, let me first tell you a little bit about Pro Strings. I set up Pro Strings about 5 years ago as an online teaching platform for violin and viola. We teach by Skype, also through downloadable videos, online live classes like today's, and we also do video exchange lessons where players send us a video of pieces they perform and we send them a video lesson back, and this is a personalized video lesson. At the moment, we have about 800 visitors each month to our website. People like you who are looking to improve their violin playing technique. We're absolutely delighted to see you today and we hope really that you get something out of this class. This live class is meant to be a taster session to give you an indication of the style of our teaching and the quality of the lessons at Pro Strings. There is also a video about position changing available in the intermediate section of the website. You may be aware that we operate a color coding for all our teaching materials on the website. Everything for intermediate players is colored in blue. If you want to move on from there, look out for orange videos and orange repertoire lists, and everything in orange then belongs together. So you know roughly what playing level you are and what playing level you can find our teaching materials at. Let's move on to position changing now. A good position changing technique is of course part of a good overall technique on the violin or the viola. So before we can even begin to think about how to change positions, I suggest we just go over some basic fundamental techniques like holding the violin, like for instance the shape of your left hand and how hard you press on the string with your fingers. I would just like you to check the position of your left hand in the first position to make sure that you have got the right starting point for when we do our position changing in a minute. So let's get your violin up on your shoulder, and I want you to make sure that your violin is sitting quite close to your ear and quite high up on your shoulder. In other words, there are some players who play like this, which makes position changing considerably more difficult. So if this is you, then push your violin aside so that it comes a little bit further to the side and close to your ear. If, on the other hand, your violin is too far to the left, again, it will make position changing really awkward and uncomfortable because of the twist of your arm. Okay, so move your violin a little bit more so that it is about at a 45-degree angle. So if you have an imaginary line straight in front and an imaginary line straight to the side, your violin's right in the middle. Okay, I would like you also to check that once your violin is positioned correctly, that your finger line, which I call my finger line, is where my fingers are attached to my hand, that is level with the E string so that your fingers, all of your fingers, are sticking up above the fingerboard. I get a lot of players coming to me who play like this, and you can see the better part of my fingers is now below the string, which is not very helpful for position changing. So if this shape looks like you, then I would suggest you go up a little bit and raise your hand compared with the fingerboard so that this row of knuckles here, the base knuckles I call them, is level with the E string. Okay, so your finger should be above the fingerboard, and your left thumb, I'll just turn it around so you can see, your left thumb should be about opposite my first or second fingers, certainly not on that side of my first finger, and also not on that side of my second finger, but somewhere in the middle there is some individual variation here. And then also it should be just peeking over the edge. So the tip of my thumb should just be peeking over the edge. Okay, and then you've got a good starting point to do some position changing. You can probably imagine that if you press harder than you need to on the strings, that is going to make position changing harder. Okay, so we press the strings down so that you just stop them with your fingers, but any more pressure than that is just going to wear out your fingertips, and it's not going to do anything different for your violin playing. So if you're pressing super hard on your violin, on your strings, on your fingertips, then you might see if you can lighten those fingertips a little bit, because that is going to stop your sliding movement of your fingers along the string. As you can imagine, if you press really, really hard, there's no way you can actually move your hand along. Okay, fingers should also be on their fingertips rather than flat. You want to make your fingers as round as you can and play on your fingertips, which again reduces the surface area of your fingertips on the strings and therefore makes position changing easier. Now this posture that we've just gone over is the same in the first and second and third positions. However, when we go into the fourth position, it is going to be slightly different, and I'm going to just show you from the other side, because what happens in the fourth position, I'm going back to the first position actually. In the first position, my thumb is there, second, third is also there, but then when I go to the fourth position, my thumb is going to make a twisty movement, and it's going to go around the neck of the violin, and when we play in the fourth position or higher, my thumb is no longer up there, but it's gone round the neck of the violin and it's in this little corner there. This is why violin makers make that corner nice and soft for you to slide around with your thumb. I'll show you again. If you want to, join in with your own instrument and you can see if your shape feels and looks the same as mine. Okay, so first, second, third position, we stay the same, and then my thumb is going to go spiral underneath the fingerboard so that it goes into the corner. Okay, so from the fourth position onwards, and you may try this on your scales, for instance, when you play in the fourth position, let that thumb go round and then let it go further round, and as you go higher, I'll come over this side again, as you go higher, there is some individual variation, because my, let me see how I can get you to see this. When we go higher still, there we are, now you can see. So my thumb has gone round and it's going round, and as I go higher still, most people will be fine leaving their thumb there, but some people, it depends on the flexibility of your joint here, will go round the side and then be able to go higher and higher like that. Other people would prefer to go underneath the fingerboard there with their thumbs and go up there. So that gives you some support. Okay, so let's go round there once more. So in the first, second and third position, my thumb stays in the same position. It goes there, then it spirals round, then it comes round the side. Ooh, sorry, there we go. Round the side of the violin, that enables you to reach right up high. And other people, they go round the fingerboard, and the thumb stays right there. Okay, so that is your basic shape. Okay, you can also tell that my elbow has gone from underneath the violin. It goes on the right-hand side, straight in front of my body now, my elbow. So now, this time when I show you from the other side again, take a look at my elbow. Because my elbow is normally, when we play, is straight underneath the violin, almost right immediately under. Now then, I can show you this from this end. As we go higher, Can you see my elbow go in? I'll exaggerate it a little bit. In real life, that is not as exaggerated as it is here, but you can see my elbow go under the violin, okay? And we'll come to talk about the elbow a little bit more in a minute. Now I'll show you from this end. As I go higher still, my elbow comes even further under. Can you see? So now my elbow, if I show you like that, my elbow is almost straight in front of my body. So that is quite important that you have that general shape right before we even start position changing. Okay, now we were talking about, the elbow. And when we change position, as I showed you, the elbow, say if I'm going from the first position to the third, my elbow is coming slightly further under. You can see it come in just a little bit here. And we're going to make use of that elbow movement when we shift positions, okay? Namely, we're going to swing that elbow and going to make it help us swing up to the positions. Now, that is much more obvious, obviously, when you play to a higher position, and we might just try that and then fine-tune this movement for you to change to a lower position. So, what I want you to practice is we're in the first position. Imagine you throw a ball. If you throw a ball and you throw it this way, we call it pushing a ball, and you know that it's not going to give a good throw. But if you swing it and you go back first and then you throw it, you get a really good momentum, and your ball will be thrown much further. It's the same with our elbow. Look, if my elbow normally would do that, now if I'm swinging my elbow, it will go up and push my hand up much further. And this swinging movement is something that I want you to consider, because it will make your position changing much easier. Okay, so when I'm going to go up, and I'm not even determining which position I'm going to, because I want you to get the general movement first before we fine-tune it, I would like you to join in with me, bringing your elbow out, and now giving it a nice swing under the violin, and just at that moment you let your fingers slide up the fingerboard here. Okay, let's do that again. Swing your elbow out and then under, and that makes my fingers slide up. Similarly, we can shift down, and of course we need to make that swinging movement the other way around. So I'm going to push my elbow further round and then swing back. So I'm going again from a higher position to a lower one. I'm going to push my elbow further round and then swing back. So if we join that up, I'm going to go out and under, now push under and swing back. Out and under, push under, swing back. And you can see, once you get the hang of that, in the beginning that's a bit confusing, because this is not a technique that perhaps is taught often enough. I don't know. I see very few people come to me already having that technique, and then everybody who I tell that technique says, why didn't I know that earlier? Because it makes shifting so much easier. So have a go trying it for yourself. So here we go again. Out and under, swing under and swing back. Out, under, push further under, swing back. Now, when we change positions, of course, we want to learn the distances that we want to slide up. And say I'm going to go from the first position to the third position. I've got to learn to dose that swing so that I don't slide way too high. Although never, ever am I worried or concerned when people shift and they shoot way past the note that they're heading for. It's always better to shift too far by accident than not far enough. And it's much easier to cure when that happens to you. So I suggest you give your elbow a very good swing, first of all, so that you overshoot your target much better than when you undershoot it. Okay. Now, if I'm going to go from a first finger in the first position to a first finger in the third position, I'll show you how that works. So I'm going to go push swing my elbow out, under, push under, swing back, out, under, push under, swing back. Now if I'm shifting, let's say, from the first position to the sixth position, not only do we need to swing the elbow a little bit harder, also we want to make sure that your thumb goes into that corner that we discussed earlier. So I'm going to swing out, swing it under, and slide my thumb around the neck here. Let it go and spiral round. I'll do that again for you. Maybe I should show you this from this end. Look, my elbow is going out and I'm swinging it under, and look where my thumb is going. Okay? So, what you do is when you play a shift in your pieces, of course you want to learn it and practice all your shifts in your pieces separately. But you want to just practice that shift time and time again here, because the more you practice that same distance, the higher your hit rate will become. I always give this example. My son plays basketball, and what they do in training is they just throw that ball through the basket time and time again. And at first, out of every 10 balls you shoot into the basket, you hit one. But when you've done that 375 times, you will hit more than one, I guarantee you. And exactly the same thing happens when you practice your shifts. If you practice from the first position to the third, at first you may overshoot it or undershoot it, but the more you do that, the more knowledge you get about the feel of the fingerboard. We call it the geography of the fingerboard. You know where every note is. You've got a mental picture of what the fingerboard is like and where these notes are, and also you've got some muscle memory. Your fingers will know where they are because they've done that so many times. So now when you've got some muscle memory in your fingers, you also know where what your target note should sound like. So not only do your muscles know, you've got a mental image of the layout of the fingerboard, so you know visually where you're going, but also you know the sound of that note. So you've got 3 ways of remembering how far your shift is going to be, and it's just a matter of playing that over and over and over again, so that you know mentally and physically where that note is. So knowing what that note should sound like is of vital importance. And if you don't know what the note sounds like, where you're heading towards, the note that you're shifting to, you might want to find out first in different ways by, for instance, playing that note in the first position so that you know where you're heading. As you become more experienced, you will know what your music sounds like. You can imagine the sound of notes in your head, even though you might never have played them before. But as you get more experience, that will grow on you, and that will become easier, and then you know where you're heading. And then there is a big general rule in position playing, and that is a very, very important one, and that is that you play the last note in the old position, your last finger in the old position, I should say, as your first finger in the new position. And that is especially the case when you play with changing fingers. So, for instance, from a second finger to a fourth finger, or from a second finger to a third finger. So your last finger played in the old position should become the first finger played in your new position. Okay. So let's now imagine I'm going to play let me give you an example. I'm going to play from the first finger B on the A string in the first position, and I'm going to go to an F sharp, which is the third finger in the third position. Okay, now my rule says my last finger played in the first position, which is the B, is going to be my first finger played in the new position. So even though I might be shifting first finger to the third finger, I'm going to shift 1-1 first. Okay, so I'm going to go from the first finger B to the first finger in third position D, and then I add my third finger. Okay, so I'm never going to go, whoa, there, and let go of that first finger. Okay, so my last finger played in the old position becomes the first finger played in the new position, and then I add the finger that I have to play at that moment. So when you practice that, you will hear that note, which is often called an auxiliary note or an extra note or a changing note. There are various different terms for it. But when you practice at home your shifts, you will make sure that you sound out that auxiliary note. And then you gradually make it disappear in sound. Your finger is still there, but in concerts, for instance, you leave that note inaudible. So your finger is still doing that movement, but you don't play it. And the same goes when I shift from a higher position to a lower one, I use the auxiliary note as well. So if I shift that same shift back from the third finger in the third position, back to the first finger in the first position, I apply the same rule again. The third finger was my last finger played in the old position, goes back to the third finger in the first position, and then I take my third finger away, and then I'm in the first position, first finger again. Now this is especially valuable because when you play high scale, so you come from a top G, for instance, in the G major scale, and you go 4, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then you've got to go to a 4, a B, and you want to go and use this finger. First finger is my last finger in the fifth position it is. I'm going to F sharp here, and then out my 4. And that gives you a completely different hand shape compared with if you didn't do that, and I see that quite a lot. My fingers aren't in their correct places at all. My fourth finger might be, but that is a much more unreliable method than when I'm going like this. First finger first, and then add 4, and the whole hand shape is very different. And all my fingers are now in the correct places in the first position, you see. So this changing note is a very, very useful tool to shift positions up and positions down. And I always suggest everyone plays with the changing note. And this golden rule is true for every playing level, even those players that I guide for conservatoire auditions and so on. I insist that they all play their auxiliary notes because it makes your shifts reliable. Even the most challenging shifts you can do much, much better when you play the auxiliary note. Now, of course, that elbow shape that we had and that elbow swing is going to help you come from one place to another. So it makes you move along the fingerboard, okay? But you want to also check that your thumb is never, ever gripping anywhere. So whenever you start sliding your fingers, you want to take the pressure off your fingers so the slide is easier, okay? Because otherwise you have a lot of hard work to do. If you keep pushing your fingers down and then try to slide, you're actually being very uneconomical with your power in your arm, aren't you? So as soon as you start to slide, lighten your fingers a little bit rather than pressing down as hard as you would do to stop the string. But I've said at the beginning, you don't need to press as hard as you need to, because you only need to press your string down as hard as until it stops, and pressing any harder is not going to be effective for your playing at all. So when you are using all these things together, and there's quite a lot of challenges here to overcome and to consider, that will take some time. You might practice them each and every one separately. So you might do your first shift just thinking about your elbow swing, and then do the same shift, put the elbow swing to one side, and then just think about your thumb, and then do that same shift again, just think about your finger pressure, and then eventually all these little aspects of position changing will come together, and you might put 2 of them together in one go, and then eventually after even longer practicing, you might find that you can suddenly play with an elbow swing, with very light fingers, with your thumb not pressing, and then having it all together. So I suggest that when you practice your pieces and you have your shifts, practice them all separately in your pieces, so that they become very, very reliable. Apart from practicing shifts in your pieces, my students also always practice the shifts separately as part of their technique practice. So they practice their shifts in their pieces as well, but it's a separate exercise. And I practice like this. Let me see you. So I practice all the 1-1 shifts. So 1, 1, 1, 1 to the 3rd position, 1 to the 4th position, 1 to the 5th position, 1 to the 6th position, and so on. I play on one string 8 positions. Okay, so I go from the 1st finger to the 1st finger in the 8th position, and then I'm going 8 to 7, 8 to 6, 8 to 5, 8 to the 4th position, 8 to the 3rd position, 8 to the 2nd position, 8 to the 1st position. And once you do that for some time, and on each finger and with changing fingers and so on, you will find that your positions changes will become a lot smoother and a lot less worrying than before. So I suggest you give those ideas a little bit of time and mull them over in your head, and then you will find that your shifts too will become much, much smoother. So I'm hoping that this has been helpful for you. If there are any questions, I can answer these now. So you can write a comment in the comment box. I'll just wait a moment to see if there are any comments coming. If not, you can always email me, and my email address is info@proamstrings.com. So any questions that you may have, post them to me, email them to me at info@proamstrings.com, and I will try and answer them as well as I can. You can also have a look at our website. There are lots of technique videos there. There are technique videos that are designed for you to join in your practice, just like we do here in this class. And there are videos about position changing, about bowing technique, about pizzicato, you name it, it is there. So you can have a look there. If you want more individual input into your playing, then just go on the Skype lesson page. There's a calendar there, and you can see if there are any times available. And you can book the time that suits you and have a Skype lesson. I will help you sort out your individual things that you come across in your music, or shifts that are particularly awkward in your music. Or you may send me a video of your playing if you like that better, and I'll send you a personalized video back that is not visible to anyone else. No, I don't think any comments are coming. So it was lovely to see you here. I very much look forward to welcoming you again soon, and thank you for attending this class. Goodbye.